Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into, well, one of the most critical policy tensions facing the Philippine private sector.
A really tricky one.
It's this whole debate around early retirement. How do you balance today's opportunity for youth with tomorrow's inevitable demographic shift? And this analysis is brought to you by AI-deas. We're part of the Good Business Podcast, proudly hosted by the PHINMA-DLSU Center for Business and Society. And we're always operating under that vital mission of business as a force for good.
That's right.
Now, just so you know, all our data today comes from an AI-generated synthesis. We made it through Notebook LM, and it draws everything from one key analysis. It's titled Early Retirement in the Philippine Private Sector, and it originally appeared in the Managing for Society column for the Manila Times.
And that article, it sets the perfect stage for this genuine dilemma.
It really does.
On one hand, you have the Philippines right now with this powerful young workforce. It's a demographic advantage that, most developed nations would kill for. But the policy question is really pointed. Should the private sector encourage early retirement right now to, accelerate career paths for young people? Or would that move just fundamentally undermine long-term productivity and financial sustainability? We're talking about using a temporary advantage without compromising the future.
That's the tension right there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the data that is fueling the pro-early retirement side of the argument. And that data comes from the January 2025 Labor Force Survey, the LFS. And when you look at these numbers, they don't just suggest growth, they suggest a real fundamental shift.
Absolutely. The LFS data confirmed an overall labor force participation rate, we'll just call it the LFPR, soaring to 63.9%.
Wow.
That is a massive jump from the 61.1% figure they recorded previously. You're talking about an influx of 2.6 million Filipinos into the active workforce.
That's not a small number.
It's not just cyclical hiring. This is a deeply engaged workforce.
And the quality of that engagement, especially with younger workers, that's what makes this moment so unique.
That's the key.
The youth LFPR, that's for the 15 to 24 age bracket, it increased to 31.8%. But the real proof for me is the youth NEET rate.
Right, NEET being not in education, employment, or training.
Exactly. And that figure dropped dramatically. It's down to just 11.7%.
Precisely. A shrinking NEET rate tells you that the pathways, the education and employment pathways, they're actually connecting.
They're working.
They are. These young workers aren't just finding any job, they're moving into formal wage and salary employment.
And the driver there is?
It's the private sector. It employs 78.5% of these formal workers. So this strong foundation, this is basically the negotiating table for the early retirement advocates.
Okay, so if the market is already booming, young people are finding work.
Yeah.
Why the push for early exits? What is the core argument they're making here?
Well, their argument is really based on two things: acceleration and congestion relief.
Congestion relief.
Yeah. They say that while the job numbers are great, the path to real career advancement, especially into leadership roles, it's still congested. So by allowing experienced older workers to retire, say between 55 and 65, you don't just create jobs, you immediately create higher quality managerial vacancies.
So it's a fast-track option for the incoming generation.
Exactly.
Instead of waiting years and years for senior staff to finally retire, the pipeline just opens up right now.
Yeah.
It lets young, talented Filipinos move up quickly.
That's the theory. It's an injection of fresh energy, fresh perspectives. You're replacing what could be stagnant leadership with dynamic new talent.
Which they argue boosts innovation.
It boosts innovation, responsiveness, and we can't forget the quality of life argument.
Right.
This policy lets workers enjoy their pensions while they're still healthy, avoiding that all too common scenario where retirement only comes after your health has already declined.
It is a compelling case, especially when you frame it against those labor stats. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the analysis immediately pivots to these stark warnings. Labor economists are looking at this youth advantage and basically saying, this is temporary and we risk wasting it.
That's the key caution. They see early retirement not as a solution, but as an immediate risk to long-term sustainability.
So the youth workforce can absorb a shock, maybe.
Yes, but not a sustained systemic drain of institutional knowledge. And that's exactly what early retirement guarantees. It threatens labor supply, productivity, and fiscal health, all at the same time.
Let's focus on that expertise drain, because that feels like the hidden cost.
It often is.
If you lose a master mechanic, you don't just lose a worker. You lose the only person who knows how to fix that one old machine.
And that's a massive concern in the source material. The analysis specifically highlights this disruption.
Is it quantified?
It is. There's a concrete metric here. There was huge concern over filling the 312,000 new managerial positions that were reported back in January 2025.
312,000.
And these aren't entry-level jobs. They require seasoning, mentorship skills, long-standing industry relationships.
So the very people who would be training and guiding the new generation into those 312,000 slots, they're the ones being encouraged to leave.
It creates a vacuum right at the top of the skill pyramid. And that instability doesn't just hit the white-collar sectors. The source points out that foundational sectors like agriculture and retail,
which added a ton of jobs.
Over 1.7 million jobs combined in January 2025. And they are critically dependent on experienced workers for just operational stability and knowledge transfer. Early exits there could threaten the very gains we're celebrating.
And if we pull the lens back and look globally, this whole push for early retirement in the Philippines, it runs completely counter to almost every major trend we see in mature economies.
It's the starkest contrast you can imagine. Look at a country like France, which, we all saw the backlash they faced recently. Or South Korea. Both are actively raising their retirement ages.
And not because they want to.
No, because they have to. They are combating aging populations and the labor shortages that come with that. To deliberately lower the retirement age now, it's like moving in the exact opposite direction of established global demographic reality.
And that demographic reality, even for a young country, that's the ticking time bomb for the pension system, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't ignore that Filipinos are living longer.
Absolutely not. The youth dividend is temporary. Life expectancy in the Philippines is projected to hit 72.7 years by 2045.
Okay.
Now, connect that back to early retirement. If someone retires at 55 instead of 65, and then lives to be 72, 73, you've just significantly lengthened the pension payout period.
While shortening the contribution window.
Exactly.
The double whammy on the financial health of the system.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. What does this mean for the cold, hard economics of private pensions?
The fiscal impact is devastatingly simple. Private pensions, they run on an equation. Contributions in have to fund payouts later. Early retirement creates what the source analysis calls a disastrous funding gap. Imagine a financial pipeline. We are drastically reducing the inflow of water, the contributions,
while simultaneously increasing the outflow.
Making that outflow last longer.
So when the fund starts running on fumes, what are the immediate consequences for businesses, for the workers who are left?
The consequences are severe. To close that gap, employers really only have two painful options. First, they can dramatically raise contribution rates for the current active workforce.
Which acts like a hidden tax.
It is. It lowers disposable wages and makes labor more expensive. Or second, they can just cut the benefits they've promised to future retirees.
And cutting benefits it undermines the entire promise of retirement security. So the young workers staying in the system are paying more now, only to get less later.
It creates this awful negative cycle. When pension funds are forced to reduce payouts, retirees don't have enough to live on.
So they're pushed back into the workforce.
Either that, or they rely heavily on family support, which strains households. Or, yes, they're forced back into the labor market, often in precarious, informal work.
So we're exchanging one kind of congestion for another.
Exactly. You're forcing seniors back into competition with the very youth you were trying to help in the first place.
And beyond the fiscal pain, this whole policy just hastens that long-term workforce participation risk. And we talked about the young workforce being an advantage. But if we encourage experienced people to leave, we're accelerating the decline of the active labor force that we need for sustained economic growth.
That's the structural concern. Economic growth requires a continuous, expanding base of active, productive, tax-paying workers. If your policy incentivizes exits, you reduce that base prematurely.
So the focus should be different.
The strategic focus has to be on maximizing the potential of every worker for as long as possible, not getting them out the door.
Okay, so let's shift the conversation. Let's move from the problem to the solutions outlined in the source material. This balanced approach. What does that balance actually look like?
It looks strategic, not sweeping. First, the analysis suggests moving away from a generalized early retirement policy.
So no one size fits all.
Not at all. It should be strictly targeted, keep early retirement as a relief valve, but only for specific high-need cases. Workers in physically demanding jobs, hazardous roles, or people with genuine health concerns. It shouldn't be an indiscriminate incentive for all skilled labor.
That distinction, a relief valve versus an automatic door, that seems critical for preserving expertise.
It is, and then structurally, we need proactive financial strengthening. The key recommendation here is for stronger private pension systems that mandate higher contribution rates during a worker's prime earning years.
So front-load the savings.
Right. If contributions are robust when employees are young and highly paid, the system is just better prepared to sustain longer payouts later on.
Let's get into what I think is the most sophisticated strategy here. Phased retirement. How does that actually work?
Phased retirement programs are a really elegant solution. They allow experienced workers to transition gradually. Instead of a hard stop at age 60, maybe they shift to a part-time role.
Or 4-day week.
A 4-day week or an advisory or mentorship capacity. The company retains their invaluable institutional knowledge, which ensures continuity.
And the worker gets flexibility.
A smoother transition.
Exactly. You're effectively monetizing their wisdom, the worker stays economically active, and the company avoids that sudden productivity cliff.
It makes perfect sense.
So the ultimate recommendation is clear. Focus on maximizing the potential of the current labor force. Proactively invest in preparing for an aging population. Don't just lower the retirement age.
So more investment in education and training.
Vigorous investment to prepare the youth for those managerial roles? Yes. But also actively encouraging and accommodating older workers so they can remain economically active. This deep dive has really clarified the tension for you, the listener. The debate around early retirement, it's a classic case of short-term gain versus long-term pain. It's less about the immediate relief of creating openings for young people and far more about balancing those opportunities with the heavy, long-term fiscal and productivity demands that an aging future population will inevitably bring. That advantage of a young workforce, it has to be used to build a robust, sustainable infrastructure, not spent on temporary job maneuvers.
And that brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with. The Philippines currently has this incredible window of opportunity because of its youth demographic. It has to ensure that its policies on private sector retirement are viewed rigorously, really rigorously, through the lens of long-term sustainability. Lest it inadvertently undermine the very strong economic and employment gains it has worked so hard to achieve.
Wise words as the private sector weighs its options. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
And remember, a balanced approach can drive sustained economic growth while ensuring a stable, equitable labor market for future generations.